Welcome back, Rebels.
So we just got off of a little Zoom call with Is This Working? Fantastic podcast, and we just did sort of like a little mini Christmas special with them, and they were talking about success, and it really got me thinking about, it's such a cliche to say like you need to work out what success means to you.
Yeah.
But it's so true, because it is so different. And obviously there's the cultural version of what success should be, which is typically like this family, this kind of straight relationship with this many kids living in a big house with a nice car. And that's the kind of presented that is equal success. But I think that's true for so few people.
Oh, 100%. And I think what was really interesting about the way they asked it when we were talking to them is it was in part of like a quick fire round. So you just had to say what you thought really quickly. And I just kind of said happiness kind of was the first thing that came to me.
Success is happiness, yeah.
It's interesting actually, like now breaking down like why I said that, because I kind of said it without even thinking. It was just what to me that is. And I think happiness is the most important thing to me anyway. I think as your answer kind of stated, that it's obviously different for every different person. But yeah, I think once you know what your happiness is, then you just need to really, really go for it. But I think it can be hard, like even when it comes to like when we talk about like finding your passion and these kind of things. Not everyone knows what success is to them, and not everyone knows what makes them happy. So I think a lot of it comes down to kind of really exploring yourself and asking yourself those questions of like, what is it that makes you really happy? And then stopping at the answer and being like, does that actually make me really happy, or is that just what I've told myself?
I've read a really interesting article on Medium today, and it was talking about financial freedom, and it was saying that you are financially free as soon as the work that you do, you enjoy and it funds your lifestyle. And it was saying that if you're an artist who earns $38,000 a year, you may be financially free compared to a lawyer that gains $380,000 a year. And that was a revelation for me to go, oh my God, I'm financially free. Because you hear those words and it sort of conjures up the image of the yacht and the mansion, like, oh, I'm financially free, I could retire at any point. But this guy was saying, no, financial freedom is once you reach that point where your career is a happy and fulfilled career that provides for what you do. And I was like, well, that's lovely. I'll sign up to that.
Yeah, because I suppose it is, do you wake up every day and do what you want to do? And as soon as you've hit that point, you've just hit the jackpot. Like that's what we're all aiming for. To be able to wake up in the morning, do what we love doing, go to sleep, and just repeat that every single day. And I think it's interesting because you definitely see it in the guests that we've had on the show before, and just I feel like the way our own lives have progressed as well. Like you do realize, like if you look back at where we were, say 10 years ago, there were so many other things around that were kind of getting in the way of us just doing what made us happy. And I suppose the more you try things, the more like you're like, okay, does this make me happy? No. Okay, I'm going to stop doing that one. Try this one. And it is just kind of going down those different roads of saying like, does this work? Will this lead to some form of happiness? And I think as we kind of talked about with the guys on that podcast, it's like you just have to walk down the roads because you'll never find it if you just sit in your house.
Yeah, so the happiness doesn't come from doing the thing in order to get something at the end of it. It just comes from doing the thing.
100%.
And that's what a lot of people are lost. They really are lost sheep and we've ranted before about all of the get rich quick schemes and all of these YouTube entrepreneur adverts that we get. What they are selling you is do this to get to the thing, not do this to do this. And doing this 100%. Is where the magic is.
That's so interesting because I feel like, you think of all those get rich quick schemes and they are all like, okay, go and buy this thing from China, sell it. And it's like, you're not going to enjoy doing that. Like that deceives the point. It's like nothing like that is going to happen. That's going to be like, cool, you've done this for 6 months. You've got 10 million pounds in your bank account and you never need to work again. It will just never, ever, ever happen like that. The only way to do it is to work out what you like doing every day and trying to get as close to that happening as possible because, like you're not going to enjoy selling stuff that you don't want to sell to people that you don't even know. It's like yeah, all of those get rich quick schemes involve doing something that you don't enjoy doing. So it's like, yes, you might get rich potentially, very small chance, I'm guessing, but you're not going to be happy at the end of that. And I think as soon as you've gone down that route, then it's almost the same as people who've gone down like a finance route or lawyer or something that's kind of like years later, they're like, oh, I don't actually enjoy this at all. But now I'm so deep into this that I can't really escape.
Yeah, so if you had that 10 million in your bank account, what is it you would be doing with your days? And for a lot of people, like if you're listening to this now, ask yourself that question. And if you don't know yet, then really try and work it out. Like if every day you could wake up and you could just do a thing, like that's your calling. That is the thing that you need to try and do. And that might involve sacrifice. It might involve, you might not be able to do it for another 6 years. In fact, again, I'll try and find this article because I just read it and then just kind of started thinking of my own stuff off the back of it rather than what the article was about. But I think it was called the 10% rule. And it was talking about how each year you get 10% closer to doing the thing that you love full time. So it's your side hustle that takes up 10% in year one. It takes up 20% in year two. I think it can be done quicker than that. I think that it shouldn't take 10 years for you to finally be 100% able to earn from your thing. Yeah. I mean, we were easily surviving after 3 years. So I think it can be done quicker, but it's definitely food for thought of however you do it, whatever the method is, like just making sure that you are on that path, the path to happiness. And that sounds like really grandiose and it sounds really big, but what else are you here for? What else are you listening to this podcast for? Like what else do you draw or paint or write or sing or dance or whatever it is that you do? Like why do you do it? You do it because it makes you happy. And this is what you need to do. That's why you're on this planet. So do it.
To get to that stage as well is always going to take some form of sacrifice, some form of effort to get there. And I suppose if the 10% rule, if that was what it was called, is probably about is someone who doesn't take enough sacrifice to get to there sooner. It's almost like if you're only going to do it for a couple of hours in the evening once a week, then it's going to take a lot longer to get there than it is if you cut down to 4 days a week at work, put one day absolutely into whatever this thing is, or make sure that your weekends are absolutely filled with doing that thing, because it's like there's going to be some sacrifice somewhere. And it's like, yes, you might have to take a pay cut, you might have to like live to different means, but I think that's so worth doing if you can get to where you want to be quicker. And yeah, life is long and there are so many years left to do this, so you can take your time, you can do it slowly, but if you want to be happier sooner, it's like, this is like the get rich quick scheme of just happiness, I suppose, of like, the more effort you put into getting there now, to finding that thing, you're going to be so wealthy when it comes to happiness, like down the line.
Yeah, we've had several millionaires on this show. And as I always say to you guys, like, get money. Money is really great. Fun tokens, they allow you so much freedom. They allow you to do a lot. So I want you all to, yes, aspire. And when you have your goal charts and all of that sort of stuff, like stick money on there because it's really important. But when we talk to these millionaires, they never say, oh, I'm so happy. Like what makes me happy is waking up and checking my bank balance. Yeah. So many of our guests that have been on the show, like name them, like Daniel Priestley is a very successful entrepreneur. Mike Winnett sold his company for whatever it was, $11 million or whatever. Liz Earle sold her beauty company to Boots. Holly Tucker that we had on the other week sold Not on the High Street. These are all like insanely like wealthy people, and I'm sure that money like allows them lots of freedom in their life and is great, but they don't talk about it at all. Like other than it's good that I've got it, but like it doesn't affect or define my happiness in any way. And there are studies on the number that we need to make us like feel more happy because it allows us certain freedoms. But then after you hit that point, it's nothing to do with that, and it's always going to be the pursuit of whatever it is that. So for Holly Tucker, it's inspiring small business owners, and that's like, it's clear if you listen to that interview for an hour, it's clear that is what she cares about. That's really what she cares about, and that's what brings her happiness.
Yeah, and I suppose that comes back to the financially free thing you were talking about earlier. Like as soon as you've hit that number with your creative passion or whatever you're trying to create, it's like, that's it. You don't need to get any more in that, because you can sustain yourself being happy forever. I think there is definitely a mistake that people make of getting to that number and being like, I can go much higher than this, but then suddenly losing what it is they actually like about doing what they do. And I think there is definitely that balance of making sure that you still love what you do compared to the like chasing the money. It's like, are you chasing the love for your daily life, or are you chasing a different pay packet that's just further and further on? And obviously I think it's hard when you get to a stage to actually stop yourself and be like, I don't need more than this, because if I try and go for that, I'm being greedy and I'll lose out on the actual thing that I love to do.
Yeah, and I mean, this is definitely an example in your life, and I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, but like that, like in the past year, you've stepped back from our businesses to put more time into your photography, and that's because that's what is really like setting you on fire at the moment. So you've made that decision of like, we had a meeting with all the staff and you were like, I'm going to take a back seat. I'm going to take less of a role in like day-to-day operations and all of that sort of stuff. And that was not a decision about anything other than your happiness.
Yes, I think for me, and it's one thing I've really learned this year, is the fact that entrepreneurship and freelancing are two very, very different things. And I think entrepreneurship is growing a business, running a business, whereas freelancing is doing what it is you love every day. And you don't need to have a big team. It's just you're doing the creative endeavor. And I think one thing that I've really taken from this year is, even though it's been really hard, it's probably been one of the most creative years I've ever had, because I've actually been creating, and it's amazing. And as soon as you can get into that state of the most important thing is to create stuff and be happy, then it's amazing how that just like completely changes your mindset. And I almost feel like now I'm probably getting close to that financially free life, because I am happy in doing what I do every day. Like taking photos, recording the podcast are my two favorite things in the world, and I get to do them all the time.
Yeah, totally. And in this episode, we're talking to Stuart Semple, and I mean, here is a guy who really has worked out what's important to him, what he stands for, what he's trying to do in the world, like the change he's trying to make. And I really want to thank Stuart. I mean, this is the first podcast where I've ever told someone that I love them live in the middle of an interview. So, which obviously made it feel really awkward. But I just want to thank Stuart for like being so open and honest, even set down to the point where he was like completely transparent with his financials, told us exactly how much he earns. And here is a guy who's got it figured out, because he knows 100%. And the conversation about money is like totally illuminating. And the main link between what we've just been talking about and this episode is like the mental health benefits. It's like Stuart is so open and honest and talks about like the experiences that he's had, like harrowing stuff that really affected his mental health, and then the path out of that, which is basically creativity.
When he said that, it really made me realize actually quite a few different guests we've had on this show, creativity has been their escape. It's been their savior. It's completely changed their life when they've been in a really, really bad point. And we talk as well towards the end of the episode just about how important it is for your mental health, and how everyone should have an element of creativity in your life just for your own well-being, like how important creativity is. And I think this is such an inspiring episode, and hopefully everyone leaving it will be like, fuck yeah, this is the most important thing.
Yeah, this was one of my favourite episodes. Stuart Semple is an artist and founder of the art materials store Culture Hustle. Stuart makes art that often isn't a physical object, but that is an experience, either in the real world or online. His work often focuses on community, social issues, and mental health. As an ambassador for the Mind charity in the UK, Stuart flies the flag for creativity as a tool for positive mental well-being.
In this episode, we talk about making paint, eBay, and creativity.
Everyone has their creative voice, and nowhere's right, nowhere's wrong, but it's important to A, realise you have one, and B, stop not letting it out, because the world needs to see it.
Hi Stuart.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going. It's good to be here with you. I'm excited.
Yeah, really good to have you on, dude.
So is it true, Stuart, that you started your career on eBay?
Yeah, that is true. It is fact. I did, yeah, way back when eBay was first invented. So we're talking about like 1999, and I had an old Dell laptop and this pay-as-you-go Vodafone that I used to plug in, and I'd upload two or three pictures every night and sell them on eBay when I was a teenager, and that's kind of how it all sort of started.
And how did that go at the time? Because I don't imagine there was many artists selling on eBay at the time.
Well, that was the good thing. So I wasn't the best one, but I was probably the only one, which meant I could actually sell work. And it was interesting because I actually started to make friends with an audience and started to realise there were people out there who were interested in similar ideas to me. And I started to build a bit of a community. And I certainly managed to pay the rent by doing this and keep my art going. So it's sort of, even though I didn't get big money, you know, these things were 30 quid or 50 quid or whatever, it meant that I could keep going, and it sort of made me feel like a professional artist in a way, and it was good.
And at the time, like that was 99, was obviously pre most social media, like the way we know it now. In what way were you kind of having these conversations, like forming a community in that kind of space?
Yeah, that's amazing, because like there weren't even blogs. So the reason why I was on eBay in the first place was because it was literally the only place you could upload an image. Like you can't, it was just easy. I could put up a picture and people would see it. So it's more about sharing the work than selling stuff. And people would email in. I made friends with a lot of the people that were collecting the work. They're still into it now. They'll still come to my shows and they've still got those pieces. They've never sold them. They're like friends. They're like family, you know. It's amazing.
I think it is so important that when you're starting anything, that you really look after and foster those relationships with the people who were there in the beginning, because they will be there the whole time. Like there's so many people who like follow me on Instagram, who followed me since I started, and my career and like artwork and visuals have completely changed, but people have followed along that journey. And I think that's something that people really like, to be able to see you grow and evolve like as time goes.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the thing is, like, I have this sort of belief that art needs an audience, you know, like if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, does a tree really fall? Well, actually, what's the point of me sitting in my bedroom making a picture that no one's ever going to see? So I understand that it's 50-50, 50 me, 50 the audience. So I'm there to make stuff for them. So I'm all about them. I'm here for them. They provide the food I eat, the materials I use. I couldn't do it without them. So I want them on the journey. They're part of it, whether they like it or not. They're coming. We're in it together.
It's really interesting you say that, because I made a post about this the other day, because I was scrolling through. I suppose it was designed to be some sort of motivational post, but it had like hundreds of thousands of likes. So the algorithm, it was to do with art, so the algorithm posted it up to me. And it was a quote that said something like, an artist should not pay attention to audience. Real art flows from an artist's soul, or something wanky like that. And I would just like fundamentally disagreed with that, because like I did a piece at uni that said, without you I am nothing. Exactly. And that was designed at whoever was reading it on the wall. Because really, like if we're making the work to then lock it in a vault and not show anyone, then what is the point?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think that's gross. Otherwise, it's basically masturbation. It's for self-pleasure, right?
Yeah.
So I think art should serve a social function. It should be absolutely about the people that engage with it and interact with it. It should empower them. It should make their life better in some way. Or we may as well do something else. There's a load of ways to please you that are easier than painting pictures or making art.
I suppose it's almost 100%. Like the difference between a diary and a novel. It's like if a diary might be just for you, but then like you wouldn't call a diary art. You would call the novel art. That's the creation that you're sharing with the world to hopefully make someone feel a certain way or have some kind of reaction to it.
Yeah, it's your sketchbook, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine to make work for yourself. Not a problem. Fill your boots, do it. But I like to make work that I hope helps somehow, some way. You know, that's the work I enjoy making and why I do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fine. I'm not saying don't make your work.
Do you think if someone was to start now, that eBay could work, or is it just too saturated?
I don't know. I mean, the world's so different. I think it would be very, very hard. I mean, hard to build a loyal audience that really understand what you're doing. But then again, if you're making really interesting work and it's different than everybody else and it's got something to say and it connects with a group of people, then I think it could exist anywhere. It could exist on a wall. It could exist in a gallery. It could, it's what are you saying is actually what matters. The platform's not the point. Good ideas will spread. And if people relate to them, then hopefully that connection will happen.
It's like a good idea is platforms don't hold that back, because a good idea is something that someone else will tell someone about. That word of mouth can never go. Like, no matter what the platform is, how big an audience that has on there, if someone finds something interesting enough to share with someone else, another human, then you can't stop that spreading. It's like whenever a movement happens, or you get a group of people together who want to start some kind of movement or something. It's like, if the internet went away, that would still happen. It's like movements happened before the internet started, and they'll happen going forward.
But I would argue that the room that the artwork is in does affect the artwork. So I've used this analogy before, but when you walk past a homeless person in the street, it's like Banksy was able to sell for like $5. He was selling prints in Central Park, but because he was appearing like he was just one of the many hustlers that are selling those kind of cheap prints, no one was buying them. But then you take that exact same artwork and you put it into a white cube, all of a sudden the room gives it a new value. So I suppose you do need to be careful where you do display your work, because maybe the eBay is the equivalent of being the artist in Central Park that's not selling anything.
I think, the context is everything, but it depends what you're trying to do. So I would be saying, I want to communicate with as many people as possible. I believe art should be for everybody. I believe it should be accessible. Where are the people? So actually right now I'm in the process of opening quite a big contemporary art gallery in the middle of an abandoned high street, because that is where the people are. And I totally understand they might not get it, and it might be out of context and it might be weird, but that's where it needs to be, in my opinion. So if they're on eBay, it's on eBay. If they're on Instagram, it's on Instagram. Because I'm all about connecting to audience. Whereas if you're trying to sell a very expensive thing for a lot of money to a rich oligarch who's in England for 2 days with his wife before they fly off to the yacht, then you might need to catch them at 8 o'clock at night in a posh Mayfair gallery after they've had a couple of drinks. But it depends what your game is.
Yeah, sure. Is that because of COVID there's become available spaces on the high street?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the high street's kind of empty. I was just very lucky. I actually know the owner of the building, and he's like, look, there's no business rates till March. I don't want it empty. Actually, Samsung had the building. They've left it. It doesn't want nothing in there. So it's an opportunity. Why wouldn't I curate a show in that space? It makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
How do you kind of see the future of the high street kind of going down that route?
I don't know. I can't see the future. I never saw this. I mean, I don't think anyone did. But I think basically, the high street's days were numbered when Amazon got good. I think, this isn't a COVID thing. This is coming anyway. I mean, COVID sort of sealed the coffin.
It's accelerated it, hasn't it?
Yeah, it was coming. Where do I see it? It's a social space, isn't it? I think, things that you can't do online. So the cafes, barber shops, hopefully more performance, more arts, more connection. It's going to be used for that, hopefully. It will go back to the people. It'll be a community thing rather than a place where big brands sell things that you don't need, hopefully.
So obviously, and I mean, we're like 5 minutes into the interview, and you've mentioned a bunch of times that how art should be for the people. The unfortunate thing is that I don't think we are there yet. And obviously there are incredible artists that are doing things for the people, yourself. And I also think of Stick. I don't know if you know his stuff, but he's doing so much with like community give back and stuff like that. How are we going to change this? Like, how are we going to, because I suppose maybe part of the problem is the general public that we want to have the art also has this kind of barrier because they've been told for so long that art is not for them. How do we smash down that sort of preconception?
No, I wish I had like the magic answer, but I think it's time. And I think that the internet's great because it enables anybody without any fear to connect with an idea. They don't need to travel somewhere, walk into a white wall gallery. They're scared they don't have the education or the lingo or whatever. So I think that's good. I think that's kind of on our side. But I think it's just about making it accessible and available and encouraging people to come in, and just being open about it. I mean, most artists I know make stuff because they're actually quite generous. They want people to see what they make. It's, in my opinion, it's the middle, and they tend to be men, so I use that word, the middlemen who want to protect it and lock it down and profit from it and make it elite. And it's actually a relatively new thing. I mean, this is since the Victorian ages. We didn't really have the commercial galleries before that. So before that, art was just how we expressed ourselves and how we communicated. We've been doing that since we drew on the wall of a cave. This is what I hunted and this is what it looked like, and so chased it down and this is what happened. It's just been co-opted, and we just need to start using it again.
How do you balance that with also the need to pay the rent and put a roof over your head?
So that's a good question, because so this is a very good question. So how do we give and be generous with our work and also keep our practice going and keep our studio going as artists, right? I mean, this is the question. And the answer is that the two things can sit perfectly well together. There's absolutely nothing to stop you spending your money however you see fit in a moral and ethical way. And there's nothing to stop you selling your work and getting paid very well. But the decision is, do you buy the new Tesla or do you feed 100 families at Christmas with the money from your art? Do you use it to open a free art space so that local school kids can come and connect with new ideas? That's up to you. So that's the answer.
Absolutely. So, but in terms of you as an artist, you're obviously very generous with, I watch your YouTube channel and everything is about you helping other artists and you doing tutorials and giving away all this information. And then I look at what you've built with Culture Hustle and how it is a resource for artists. But then where does the cash generation for you to turn your lights on?
I see what you mean. Well, I get a very small salary from Culture Hustle, and I'll be completely honest, I get £740 a month. I live in a very small rented house. I have 2 pairs of sneakers. I'm not a sneakerhead. My favourite meal is lentils and rice. I live on £1,500 a month. Even if Culture Hustle made £10 million, I would still put it into the things I put it into, which is making things better for other people, because I have everything I need. So that's how I do it.
That is amazing. I really love that answer.
It's so good. And I think it's really important for people to work out what actually is important to them and build a life around that, because I think a lot of people do get this idea that having 100 pairs of sneakers is important to them. Sorry, David, who connects to
all right,
sneakers.
Mate. No, each their own. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's not my thing.
Yeah, but I think it's not a lot of people's thing. A lot of people who will have those things, if they actually ask themselves what is important to them, it's probably not owning those things. And I think understanding what you actually do need to survive, what you need to actually sustain a happy life that fulfills you, is a really important place to start.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you work out what you need and then you work out how you can finance that, and then everything else is a bonus. And then, if you want to buy some really crazy Jordans or whatever, do it, enjoy it, feel the dudes, you deserve it, go for it.
Thanks, Stu.
Yeah, but if it rocks your boat, like we just, I don't know if you saw, but we made these Christmas art tins over at Culture Hustle, and every time someone buys a tin, we're working with the local food banks, and we're providing food and fuel and toys for the local families. And I just found out we've now hit our target. So that's 1,000 people in our local area this Christmas. We'll have £100 to spend on food, 25 quid to keep the lights on, and a £20 toy voucher, right? Now that's beautiful. I'll tell you what, I will never ever get that pleasure out of buying a toy, as I will knowing that's happening this Christmas, right? So that's exactly what I mean.
So what is Culture Hustle and where was it born?
Well, it's kind of weird. It's really weird because it's two things. So one, I wanted to make a website that would sell cool things that we found. So my friend Castle in Denver can find really cool stuff. And I was like, it would be really good to just put it on a website and we'll call it Culture Hustle. So that's how that started. And then this whole initiative.
What kind of stuff?
Oh, just stuff from the thrift stores and things, crazy things. She's just got an amazing eye. So it's we'll just do that. It'll be fun. We'll put some books and stuff. And just for fun, for a thing to do together. And then this whole Anish Kapoor thing kicked off with the blackest black. And then I made the pinkest pink, which I already had. And I was like, oh, it'd be really funny to put it on the internet as like a piece of performance art. Like the website would be like a piece of art as a joke. And we had Culture Hustle there. So I was like, oh, let's put it on the Culture Hustle thing. We've already got the domain and stuff. It would be a good way to kick it off. And then it just sort of took on a life of its own. And now it's turned into this quite big non-profit art materials thing. That's the only thing I can describe it. It's a monster. And it's like, we make the coolest art materials in the world. I would say that, but actually I do believe they are. And we share them with artists on a not-for-profit basis. And then we put all the money into making more cool art materials for artists and providing artist support for those that use it. So that's it. That's what it is, and that's what it does.
So there's obviously a really long history of artists creating their own, like scratching their own itch, creating their own pigment and stuff. But I would think that when you created your Pinkest Pink, I mean, there were obviously Winsor and Newton and all of these companies, there were thousands of pinks to choose from. What was it that, because I feel like most artists wouldn't take the initiative, like maybe they did 30, 40 years ago, but in the current space, most artists would go, well, there's a pink, I'll use that. What was it that drove you to go, I need to be pinker?
No, but it's not just the pink, like you've hit it on the nose. So basically, up until relatively recently, there weren't commercial paints that you could walk into a shop and buy. Artists made their own, right? That's how you had to do it. There was no way about it. So you would have a hookup that would be called a pigment man that you would meet, who traded a certain colour from Venice or the Silk Road. And in your studio, you would make them into potions, and you were almost an alchemist. And you would guard these recipes with your life, and your studio assistants would make these colours for you. That's how it has been done. Now, if you are like me and you're obsessed with looking at art, you walk around the National Gallery, you look at a Van Gogh, you're like, holy shit, these are the brightest, most vibrant colours I've seen in my life. Then you go down to your local art shop and you buy a tube of Winsor & Newton. You're like, what the hell's going on? This isn't the same stuff. What's going on? Why can't I get that? Which is all it was about for me. So I was like, how is a paint made? What are they made of? Wait a sec, it's basically 4 ingredients. I can do this myself. Now we're in the territory of a Tesco ready meal versus actually cooking a nice meal from scratch with your own ingredients, right? Now I've got a much more delicious meal. So I'm building these colours for my art shows because I want my paintings to be more vibrant, like the history books. I don't want the commercial paints because they're I'm not slapping anyone off, but they're full of water and fillers and the cheapest pigments you can get, and they're out of date, these formulas, right? And I'm just telling you that, hand on my heart. We pick them apart all day. They are really lazy and they're ripping you off. And I didn't like it. I didn't want to use it. So I wanted my own things, sort of more saturated, more potent, played how I wanted them to play on the surface, right? So that's what I was doing. I got into making paint 25 years ago to use in my work. That's it.
I think back to that meal analogy as well, like surely the satisfaction at the end of that, once you've finished a piece, to know how much work has gone into that. It's not like you've just gone to a shop, bought a couple of things, whacked it on the canvas. It's a whole process has gone into that.
Yeah. And there's also a bit of a needs must kind of thing, right? So I was quite poor. I grew up in quite a, sort of sketchy financial situation. So, I kind of had to make my own paints. There are good paints, but they're very expensive. So I didn't really have access to that either. So I kind of had to be a bit more inventive, I suppose.
I think when you get started in anything, especially if you're from a background that isn't like you don't have loads of money to just throw at all the best technology or the best whatever is out there, like it's amazing how much actually, if you just look into it like you did with the paints, there are so many ways that you can create stuff affordably. Or like I talk about it a lot with like technology, like I'm a photographer, and I think like you don't need the best cameras to make a good image. Like so much it can be done with a cheap camera or your phone, and then just put it through some editing software, because actually just the time and effort that it's going to take to learn how to edit things better is going to give you an image that will rival something that costs loads that you could just like use straight out of the bank. And then the process of learning, the knowledge that you'll gain through doing that, and the kind of appreciation, it's so similar to what you're saying with the art. It's like at the end of it, you can be proud of it because you've really put work into that.
It's true. It's just so much more rewarding. It's almost too easy to just grab something off the shelf and,
Do you consult with any sort of outside people? Is there any sort of scientists involved? Because you've created so many products now. What's the sort of process of developing a new product?
That's a good question. So first of all, it's all audience led, right? So it's not I have a crazy idea at this point. People are writing in and they're suggesting things, and we're getting a sense of what's needed. Because actually, we're not for profit, right? So we can't just make every old thing. So it's quite limited. We're trying to add value. We're trying to make things that you can't get elsewhere, solve problems. So, when we see one that we're like, okay, for instance, the mirror paint, people were like, there's things, but there's not what we need. I was like, okay, we'll take it on. So that was a collaboration with an external lab, actually, that we collaborated with to develop that. And they are real geeks. But in the studio, I have 2 full-time scientists. One of them is an amazing chemist, and I mean amazing paint chemist. And the other one is a forensic scientist who's amazing at solving problems, putting things together, researching different ways of doing things. And the 2 of them with me and the community is kind of how we're doing this.
How important would you say problem solving is in creativity?
Oh, it's not even important. It is creativity. That's what creativity is. Creativity is finding a new or novel or unique or innovative way around something. I mean, that is the creative impulse, isn't it? Without that, you're, if you face a problem and then you freeze, then that's a really sad state of affairs. If you face a problem and then you dig into your creative inspiration to solve it, that's when you start pushing boundaries and creating things that are new. So, we could look at all the mirror chrome spray paints that are out there and go, hey, that's really hard. Everyone's had a go. We may as well stop. Or we can say, let's get really creative. What's this going to take? And then creativity comes, and then you make interesting things, and then hopefully they're useful because they're new.
And where do you feel like the confidence comes from there? Because it's like, I feel like if someone comes to you with an idea, you're going to be like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we can solve that. Because you've got the confidence that you can do it. Whereas I feel like a lot of people getting started, or people who wouldn't count themselves as creative, might say, oh, I'm not creative because they don't feel confident enough to solve those problems.
No. It's easier than that. You don't even need the confidence. I don't have any. I don't know if it's going to work or not. I'm not obsessed with the outcome. I don't even take it that far. So I don't care whether it works or not. I'm absorbed in the practice of doing it. So I don't even take it there. And I don't honestly know. I mean, like in reality, probably 9 out of 10 things don't work, but I enjoy trying and tinkering with it. And then every now and then one does. And that's okay with me because I enjoy the work. I'm showing up to do the work that I'm passionate about. I don't care whether it works. I love it when it does, but I'm not that obsessed with the outcome like that.
One of the problems you have solved is the problem of glitter. How did you get around that and make glitter actually eco-friendly?
Yeah, no, that's an important one. That was a big problem, but it wasn't actually that hard because glitter is plastic, which is basically cellulose. Well, we know that plants make cellulose. So it's not too much of a jump to realise that there's all this waste material coming off of eucalyptus, which they use for essential oils. And what do they do with it? They throw it away. Well, what if they don't throw it away and we colour it and then we roll it flat and then cut it up? You actually get eco glitter, don't you? So there was a bit of a tangential jump to get to that, but we were like, what else is cellulose? Oh, plants make cellulose. Wait, so why are we making it out of plastic? And where do we get cheap plant that doesn't hurt the environment? Oh, they're throwing that away. Okay. Well, can we repurpose that? Because sometimes what you need is the thing that's left on the floor. You're just missing the point. So that's how we solved that. And people seem to be using it. The problem we have with it is it's still really expensive compared to plastic glitter because we can't make it in the batches that these huge Chinese factories are chucking out plastics. So to get people off that plastic junk and onto more sustainable things is really hard because you buy our glitters, you're in for 20 quid. You could go down the works and be in for £3. And that's difficult. But that's education,
Because you are solving these problems, and from speaking to you, I'd imagine you probably want your ideas of like open source, right? So if someone then wanted to go and create their own eco glitter, have you been approached by anyone who wants to like take the idea on, or is it literally just you guys that are flying this flag at the moment?
Sometimes people do write in and they ask how to do things, and they're really, it's quite an open community. So we're really keen to share. I mean, it's not like we want to be the only one. Like, in the ideal world is that the big glitter manufacturers actually learn from us and step up. You know, that would be great. I mean, I'd love it if we didn't ever have to sell another Dazzle, because people can get it on the high street for £3, you know. I'm all about that. 100%.
So obviously you crowdsource your ideas, so you'll never just make a product just for the sake of it. I guess you'll get a significant number of people asking for one thing, and then you go, okay, this is what we're going to direct our time into. Have you had any messages from like new artists who are just discovering your products for the first time? Like, what are some of the interesting feedback that you've had from people?
Oh, you know, it's so varied. I mean, every day there's so much. I mean, the nicest ones are the ones where people have never painted before in their life and never thought art was for them. And the materials have been a way in, firstly to start making work and then looking at other people's work. They're beautiful. All those messages are the reason like I want to do it. But yeah, just sometimes they're just some great ideas, or someone shows you something they've made, which is amazing, like a great piece of work.
Yeah.
They're the best ones.
What would you say to someone who doesn't think that they're creative, or knows someone, because I imagine most people listening to this show will be creative, who knows someone who is maybe, kind of wouldn't count themselves as creative? How could you inspire someone to pick up a paintbrush and or do anything in a creative practice?
It's hard because, it's not about imposing something on people. You must make art. You know, it's really not my thing. I'm just not into it. That's okay as well, right? But if you do want to start to connect with your creativity, the message that I have is stop not doing it. And that's deeper than you think when you hear that, right? So it's not just do it like night, just start painting something, just start writing. It's not that. What you're actually doing first is you're not being creative. Actually, as a species, that's what we're built to do. The apex of humanity is creative self-expression. That's why we are different than monkeys. That's what we are. But we don't do it. Why do some of us not do it? So what we first have to do is deal with the easier thing, which is softening into the fact that maybe we need to stop not doing it and see what emerges. And it might be it starts where you start icing a cookie for your kids, and then that stems into something else. Or maybe a bit of music comes on and you start just moving, you know? So everyone has their creative voice, and, nowhere's right, nowhere's wrong, but it's important to A, realise you have one, and B, stop not letting it out, because the world needs to see it and you need to make it. That's where I go with that.
Obviously, Culture Hustle has turned into this sort of behemoth, and now is I would imagine taking up a lot of your time. How do you balance Culture Hustle with your own practice, because you're still a practicing artist?
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, to put it into context, we just moved into a new building, and we've got 40 members of staff at Culture Hustle now. And all of a sudden, there's a creative director, there's an art department, there's paint makers, there's the research and development team. And I've turned into, well, you'd say like a CEO, but I don't feel like that at all. I still feel like an artist, right? So how do you wrestle that? I go in as an artist. I see the project as an artwork. I see the whole thing as a piece of performance art. I see how is what we make and put out into the world connecting with an audience in the same way a sculpture would, in the same way a piece of public art would. We're still doing the same thing. We're still making stuff that I believe is good and sharing it with an audience and trying to connect around ideas. And to me, if I put paint, this is going to sound a bit conceptual, but I'm going to go there, because I think your audience will get this. If I put paint on a canvas, it's a painting because I'm an artist. If I take the paint off the canvas and put it in a pile in the floor, it's a sculpture, arguably still a painting because I'm an artist. If I put that paint in a jar, it's still an artwork because I'm an artist and it's paint. If I send it to you on the internet, you now have a piece of my art in your house that has my signature on it. It might look like pink paint in a jar, but to me, it's a piece of art. If you then take the lid off and you make a piece of work, you and me are making a collaboration. That's beautiful. That's how I see it.
I love you, man.
That's such a good answer.
So cool.
One thing you mentioned there was audience. And I think what you've managed to do really well is grow a good audience and a good community. How is it that you kind of maintain that community and kind of really like
galvanize?
Yeah.
Galvanize, I don't know. I mean, it's not, sounds kind of weird. It's not considered like that. So they're our friends, like really. And I know like brands talk about this shit all the time and it's all half-assed and it's not real. They genuinely are our friends and we genuinely do care. So we're making it together. You can't do it without them. They can't do it. I don't know. It's like a house party. We're just getting on with it together. I don't know how else to describe it. It's very real.
I think that's the perfect answer. I think it's all about the people and it's not just using the audience as a metric just to kind of make yourself feel good. It's about having those real connections. And I think a lot of people, especially these days, because social media is so big and that's their first approach of anything, that they forget that the people are there and actually the importance of the people to make it go further. It's not just about you. It's not this ego-driven thing.
No.
It's about a community.
Yeah, and it's also not about growth. Like, it's not like, how do we get more people? How are we bigger this year than last year? You know, there's too many people putting that as the holy grail. Forget that. How can we actually look after the people who've supported us to make this thing? And how can we keep making stuff together forever? That's way more interesting. I don't care if we're bigger or smaller next year than this year, or we get 10,000 more Instagram followers. I could care less about that. What I care about is the fact people are making good art and that we're having fun.
And so for someone listening to this who might think that social media metrics are more important than that, what would you say to them?
I just laugh. I mean, like, do you really think if people put a heart on an Instagram picture, they actually love you? Real love isn't how you click a button. And like you said earlier, we can quantify it a bit with social. But what about all the other things we can't quantify? Like what the hairdresser says when you get in your hair. You go into the chips, oh, did you hear about the thing that's happening? There's so much going on that we can't quantify. Why don't we stop quantifying it and actually look at like real interactions, real emotional contact with people? And let's see the depth of meaning. So let's actually play to the depth of experience rather than the quantity of it. I mean, if we've learned anything through this COVID and what's happening on the high street, is quantity isn't the answer. More isn't better. It's not the right way. Not at all.
And on the topic of COVID there, it's obviously been a very weird year for everyone. How have you found community being able to continue because of the internet? Because obviously you can't go out and meet people now to have those proper interactions. In what way can you still have and kind of keep that community alive as much as possible?
Well, I think we're super lucky that we have the internet. I mean, if this had happened, people compare it to one of the world wars or whatever. I mean, they couldn't communicate at all. We didn't have any sense. So we are so lucky. And thanks to technology. I mean, it's been brilliant, hasn't it? But at the same time, it's been hard. I've had big art shows cancelled. I've not been able to connect with people who work on the Culture Hustle project in the same way. We've been connecting on Zoom rather than seeing each other face to face. And nuance is lost. Make no mistake, communication is about more than a video chat. And things are lost in translation online, on email, on WhatsApp or whatever. So that's been hard. And then also, I had COVID early on and it wiped me out for about a week and it was minor. I wasn't in hospital. I know people got really bad. I'm not saying that, but it's lingered with me for since March. So, a while, and it keeps bouncing back. And I've had a hard time. So I haven't had the same energy or the same focus. So that's been really tough. I mean, it hasn't been easy for anybody. And I'm one of the lucky ones, who's all right. But I know people have been really affected. It's been tough, especially on the arts.
Have you seen any really good examples during this period of how the arts have really succeeded online and kind of maybe transitioned a bit?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you saw, but one of the projects we did was VOMA, the Virtual Online Museum of Art. So that's voma.space if anybody wants to visit it. And we actually built a virtual museum from scratch, working with CGI designers, game designers and technologists and a good curator and an architect. And we put exhibitions on. And the reason why we did that, interestingly, is because no one else was stepping up to do it, which was strange. You'd expect, like, galleries put things online or whatever. It wasn't the same because their agenda was different. So most of the stuff we saw was people trying to sell stuff. Because people couldn't go into the gallery to buy the art, they were forced, reluctantly, to make an experience online to try and keep the business going. We actually said, hey, what about all these people who are stuck at home who can't get to a museum or see art? So I think we came out of that, which I'm proud of what we did. But I'm trying to think of other things. I mean, there were people like live streaming, live drawing classes, things like that were going on. There was definitely some sort of, the musicians seemed to be doing a lot of sort of streaming gigs and stuff. I think that community really got it, more than visual arts, actually. A lot of performers were doing things. Punch Drunk did something amazing on Facebook.
What did they do? Because I love them, and I didn't see that.
What they did was a 24-hour live stream that was streamed live, that they broadcast on a mobile phone onto Facebook. And they went through all these different like villages and buildings and this drama, and it was epic what they built. They just embraced it. They just took it there. And that was one of my favourite things, actually, that Punch Drunk thing that they did. I don't know if you can get a replay somewhere, but you should try and look it up.
Definitely.
I would recommend anyone check out Voma as well. Like you can see the love that's gone into building it. Just the experience of walking around, like the textures of everything, and the movement of the water, and the fact that there was a Caravaggio hanging in there was a big thumbs up from me. So I think another thing that you did really well that popped onto my radar was the job centre.
Thank you.
When Rishi, that was really funny.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, it was just one of those things. It was like, so Rishi Sunak said, artists should retrain, and it was actually Bridgeway. And actually, I was getting messages from a lot of artists, so it's actually real. They're literally getting phone calls from Universal Credit telling them to get a job in the prison service or whatever, and they're like, but I'm planning my show, I've been successful, what are you on about? Like, I'm the worst person to work in a prison, are you insane? I'm an artist, this is mad, don't send me into a war zone and I'll lose. So that is actually really going on. So I wanted to do something, so I made an installation, a piece of public art in the middle of London, and it was a sort of pseudo artist job centre, which was really about the idea of retraining. So it looked like an artist job centre. It looked a bit 90s, a bit dirty, a bit grimy. But the sad thing that came out of that was, and I wasn't expecting it, real artists were pressing the buzzer to get real jobs. And the jobs were ridiculous, like ballpoint pen tester, toothpaste tube scrap. And they were like, I am a performance artist. I've been in 84 shows in the last 2 years. I've got no work. I'd like to apply for the job to test ballpoint pens, please. And I was like, this is real. Like, I didn't realise quite how inundated we'd be, and how bad the situation was. It's serious.
Yeah, it really is. I was speaking to a friend recently, and one of his mates is a cello player who's played concerts with Bjork and like really like an accomplished musician, and he's retraining as an electrician. But I think we've mentioned it on the show before. Now is the time for a survival job, and if you are a creative at heart, like maybe now's not the time to pursue those things, and that's fine. Like, you can always pick it up later. It's like your creativity is not going to go anywhere, but now survival mode. And if you need a regular boring job to do that, then that's fine. Get that job.
You have to look. We just have to keep going for long enough till we can make our work, and that's it. Yeah, and exactly. Again, it goes back to that thing. Why are you doing it? You can work in telesales to make your art, or you can work in telesales to go out on a Friday night. And if you're there to make art, then you're way ahead of the game, and that is what you should do. I mean, T.S. Eliot worked in a bank as a bank clerk and wrote some of the best poetry the world's ever had. So there's no shame in that at all. It's a beautiful thing to do, that for your art. It's part of making the work. To see it's part of making the work.
It's almost similar to like making the paints. It's just putting that extra effort in before you've even put paint on canvas. It's like, and when you finished it, you're going to be so proud because you know how much work went into that wasn't just the actual creation.
It's part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier bringing on a creative director. What was the decision there of that role to not actually be yourself?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I'm not good at everything. And there's people who are better at things than me. And Nat is a really, really good creative director who's worked on things that I really admire, and I really love her work and I love the things she's done. And I know that for the future of the project, it can't be about me. It can't always be me that leads it. It needs to take on its own strength. And if it's going to grow, it needs people who can do things I can't do. So, I'm good at some things, but creatively directing the direction of a project like Culture so as it grows is above my knowledge, above my ability. And it was like, I need someone who knows how to do this properly, because I wouldn't be serving people properly if I'd have, it's all about me, it's got my name on it, how I say goes. It's not an ego trip at all. It needs pros.
Have you always had that mindset, or did you want to think, I can kind of do all this, like it's my thing, I'll just do it myself?
No, never. I've always admired artists who, because people get stick, like Damien Hirst gets stick, Jeff Koons gets stick, 'cause they don't make every single piece with their own two hands, right? Mm-hmm. And Damien Hirst will tell you, well, I'm like the architect, architects don't build their own buildings, I come up with it and then I need help. And I'm not ashamed to say I need help sometimes with my ideas. And let's get someone in who's really good, because we're going to get a better thing to share with people. And my job is to get the best thing to the audience possible. And I might not be the guy to do it. And I'm cool with that.
Yeah, the idea is the artwork, isn't it? A lot of your work is about people and communities, and I suppose connection on a wider level. Where did you find that where did that come from, of that need to express that through your artwork?
Lots of things. I mean, I sort of, I grew up in the 80s. It was a hard situation. As I explained, it was very, very poor upbringing, but there was a lot of love, but there was no money. And I could see the problems of society. There was a lot of unemployment, whatever. And I was like, my parents wanted me to be a doctor because I was quite clever. And that was a way to help people. I got that. But I like the idea that art can do that as well. So I see artists could actually have a function. I hate this idea that we're irrelevant and unimportant and a bit flimsy. Actually, I think we can step up and bring some fresh ideas and contribute. So it kind of comes from that point of view. And then back in the last recession, like 2008, it was really bad. And I went through that. And a lot of the dealers who were selling my work and stuff, they went bust. And it was a terrible time. And I decided I was going to let these smiley face clouds off from the Tate, these eco bubbly clouds that I call happy clouds. And I just went down there and I let these clouds off, and they floated from the Tate towards the financial district, these giant smiley faced eco clouds. And people understood the work. It was suddenly in all the newspapers and people connected with it, and it was simple. And they understood what I was saying, that art might be able to help, and it was something uplifting, and it just worked. And at that point, something kind of clicked in me. I was like, oh my God, like art can actually do something. And the whole course of my work changed to be, it just did a whole 180, like that moment. And it was like, it's not about that, it's about actually, and then things like, obviously the job centre comes from that idea, like let's put it where the people are, let's be useful, let's make them laugh on the way to work, let's spread some, let's do stuff. So I started to make much more public, community focused things. And at that point, two really weird things happened. All my galleries dropped me because you can't sell a job centre and you can't sell a fluffy cloud that disappears. And they would say, well, where's the new paintings? Everyone liked it when you did those glittery lips. Can we have another 20 of those? And I was like, I'm just not interested. I'm really sorry. It's not who I am. You can't buy my stuff. I don't make that anymore. I make experiences, and you can't own an experience. You can merely have it. So there you go. Shot myself in the foot a bit, but
you mentioned there I think we are fed, and I always sound like super tinfoil hatty when I go on these rants on the podcast, but I think that we are fed this kind of bullshit of that the artist can't make a difference, that like in every 80s movie, the artist is the loser boyfriend that the dad doesn't like. I think we're fed this narrative because art is so powerful. And for such a long time, I believed that I couldn't make a difference and that I couldn't, like, that my art was useless, because I was being told from everywhere, like, this is not a career option, this is not like a viable thing for you. And because most artists get that from every direction, we take it on and we kind of undervalue the power of art. And I think it's only, you've obviously overcome that, and I think I've started to. And I think that, yeah, we all need to just realize like how much like really fundamentally is like one of the, if not the most powerful medium is art, is like songs, poetry, paintings, like to make people feel feelings. Like that's how we're going to change the planet.
Yeah, 100%. You're right. It's beautiful. I got weird goosebumps when you're saying that. Yes, exactly. All of that. That's right. Now, whether it's a conspiracy to stifle our creativity, I don't know if I go that far. I think it's been a slow erosion of us sort of forgetting what we actually are, which is creative beings. But I don't think it's that hard to remember what we are either.
But the reason that happens is because they want us all to be in these. It's like when I am buying my sneakers, I know exactly what's going on there. Like I'm in on the joke. Like I know that I'm being like packaged up and going, here's your slice of happiness, like have another pair of trainers. I know that I'm in that kind of thing.
But the thing is, look, this is what I say. If art is an experience, right? So just play along. If art's not an object gives you an experience. The sneakers give you an experience, right? At least when you're thinking about buying them. That experience might change the minute you buy them, but that's a different thing,
yeah.
Right? We won't go there because it'll annoy you. But let's just say there's an experience that's instigated by an object that somebody made. So Jeff Koons made a balloon dog, and you can like it, hate it, not really get it, doesn't really matter. But there's an experience of the object, right? The art is the experience, not the object. Not the action of making something, not the object itself, but actually an ephemeral thing between the viewer and the thing, this experience. If that's the case, and I believe it is, and you might disagree with me, then how do you buy that experience? So, for example, Damien Hirst and Jeff Koons are clever because they understand what I mean. So they're taking the piss out of this, and people don't realise. So you pay 80 million for a Jeff Koons balloon dog. You haven't bought the art, you've bought the object. You can't buy the art. The art is free. It's not in the object. So they're idiots. So when Damien Hirst makes hundreds of butterflies and traps them, he's making fun of collectors. He used to pin butterflies in boxes back in the day. And when they pay millions, he's laughing because they bought some dead butterflies. They didn't buy his art because you can't buy art because it's an experience. And I come from it from this point of view. So what you thought you bought with the sneakers, when you got them, you didn't get, because it was never about the sneakers. It was about the hype that exists before you buy the sneakers. And you can't buy the hype, which is why you guys keep buying more sneakers. You never buy it. You can't fulfill it. Even if you buy 1 million of them, you'll still feel that, because that feeling has got nothing to do with sneakers. It's to do with you, because this feeling starts in you, not in the object.
100%. No, look, I get it. We mentioned obviously the audience being really important, creating art that gives a positive experience to the viewer. But what about the mental health links to us expressing our creativity? How have you kind of discovered that?
Okay, so that's really important. So to understand that, we have to go a bit into my personal history a little bit. So when I was 19 at art school, I nearly died from an allergic reaction. And it was a really brutal thing. I hadn't seen my mum for ages. I flopped on her doorstep, kind of dying. I went to hospital and they couldn't make the allergy go away. So they basically said, it's not a case of if you're going to die, it's when. So I said goodbye to my mum, my sister, and I was in this basically waiting to die. And they gave me a drip of this blood plasma, and I was allergic to it. And I flatlined. And for some mad reason, I didn't die, and I came round, and I don't know why. It was all very cosmic and a bit weird, a bit just insane, like some weird psychedelic strangeness happened. But after that, I went home and I had a huge anxiety problem because they couldn't tell me what I was allergic to. So it could be any one of 52 things. So I couldn't eat anything because I was scared. So I had an eating disorder. So my mental health just hit rock bottom. And this is back in the 90s. And young men didn't have mental health issues in the 90s. Mm-hmm. They did, but my God, we didn't. You couldn't. I didn't even know what to call it. It wasn't even stigma. It's like we're way ahead of that now. But in those days, I didn't even have the words. I didn't know it was anxiety, right? I didn't even know it was that. I just knew something wasn't right. So I started drawing and painting to get through it. That's why I put those 3 pictures a day on eBay. Almost as therapy. I just wanted to get something out and share it with someone. So this is what it feels like. Say it. It was almost like talking to it, and it worked. And it was a lifeline for those 3 years, and it really got me through like such a dark time. So I know creativity works. So I've done work with Mind, the mental health charity. I'm actually an ambassador for Mind, and we set up a creative therapies fund to help other people to connect with their creativity who are going through hard times. And we find it works. Now, how and why it works, I just think that sometimes we have things that we need to express, and I think it's hard to do it with words sometimes. I do believe we're creative creatures, and I think the self, or what we are, does need to be expressed in some way. Otherwise, I think it gets blocked in us and it goes a bit wonky. And this is me not being a psychologist or a doctor or anything, just speaking from my experience. And I think a creative outlet is beautiful because once you've found it, you have it forever. It's like a little ray of sunshine that comes in, and that's what we see with people who start expressing themselves in some way. It doesn't have to be great art or important art. The point is, it just needs to be done, and it can be very powerful.
I think that comes back to something when we talked about earlier, when I was like, how can we try and get people to start being creative? I think just listening to what you just said there is the perfect reason why everyone should try and get some form of creative outlet. Because if that's the way you can express yourself, if you don't currently have a way to express yourself, if you don't write, if you've never done music, if you've never painted, you've never done anything expressive, like there's probably something trapped in you somewhere because you don't know how to convey an emotion. And that's where probably mental health and like where things like suicide and things will really kick in, when there is not a way to really express how you're feeling and just getting out. Like even just having someone to talk to, that is a form of expression. And I think if you don't have anyone to talk to, or you feel like there's not that there, then yeah, just a piece of paper and an art material could be that outlet that you need to get out of how you're feeling and to make like to lead a happier existence.
But I think also, like, just on that, I think it's really important people understand, like, it's not just people who are ill. Like, this is something we can all 100%. Do to make us feel well and good. Like, we all know we exercise, don't drink too much, have 5 fruit and veg a day, whatever. We get that message. I think an element of creativity is an essential part of our diet, if you like, and it should just be part of what we do. It's just who we are. You know, if you don't do it, sooner or later, you're going to wish you did.
Yeah, they say that you should have therapy even if you feel fine, and that everyone should have therapy. And I would argue the same for creativity.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
It's not like I feel like mental health and just your body in terms of health and health in general, it's a scale, isn't it? It's not like it's just healthy, not healthy. It's like there's a huge kind of hill, I suppose, going up to a cliff. And it's like, it's just pulling yourself back down before you hit that cliff and making sure that you're as healthy as possible in whatever way that could be. And if you can find any way to make yourself more healthy, then you should be doing that.
Yeah, you've just got a head start. It's like they said with COVID, you know, people who are healthier, fitter, have a better diet, you know, don't have a pre-existing condition like a heart illness or whatever, are more likely to have a less severe reaction. Now, you know, I had COVID and it wasn't that bad. And that's probably because I eat quite well. I'm a vegan. I exercise. I do yoga 3 times a week. You know, maybe if I hadn't have been doing those things, it would have hit me much worse. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think that, you know, if I did have a big anxiety episode, my art would be there for me, and it would be something that I've practiced enough, and it's something in my corner ahead of time. And I think that's the reason to cultivate it as well. And it's fun and it's rewarding, and it is just, why wouldn't you? Like, it's nice. Like, it's not a chore.
I know. I've noticed when you do your like IG lives and stuff like that, you get asked a lot of questions by younger artists. What do you think are the main sort of problems that are holding emerging artists back?
I hear a few things. I mean, one of the questions that I get most is just creative block. Everyone asks me that every time. What do I do? I've got creative block. I don't know what to do next. So that always comes up. And then the other one is quite often, sadly, like discouragement from friends, family and teachers. Like, it's brutal. It's wrong. And that's still going on massively. And, you know, I just hope we can move beyond that, because that's really savage. You know, when your mum and your school teacher and everyone's telling you you're wasting your time, and no one in your school's ever done anything artistic ever, and no one's ever been to a museum, and it's just that kind of aspiration. And I don't really know how you fix that at all. I wish I did, but that's the problem.
I mean, I think the goal of this podcast is we aim to be that voice of when everyone else tells you that you're a lunatic, that actually, no, we were told that our things would never work and they did. So if we can do it, there is hope.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I was told I'd end up chopping my ear off and drinking meths in a bedsit if I was an artist, and I was insane for going to art school. You know, I had to fight to do that because no one around me where I grew up had ever done it. They didn't even know what art was. You know, really, it was insane. It was like I may as well have told them I wanted to be an astronaut and join NASA. You know, it was that weird, especially in those days. Because now, luckily, you know, some artists have made money and are in the newspapers and stuff. But in the 90s, were you mad? And I was like, well, it's just my thing. Like, I can't help it. It's like, what do you want me to do?
And I think as well, for anyone listening to this, you still have 2 ears, right?
Yeah.
Dude, this was super inspiring. Thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed this chat, and I think people will get a lot from it. Could you let everyone know where they can find you online?
Yeah, so you can just Google Stuart Semple. You can find my website. It's Stuart Semple on Instagram, Stuart Semple on Twitter, and then Culture Hustle. If you want to check out what we're doing with that project, culturehustle.com, Culture Hustle on Instagram. But you'll find me, and I'm there, and I normally write back. So say hello.
Boom. Amazing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, dude. It's been so good.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.